What's up, everybody? So we're out in the shop with another Shop Talk Tuesday, and in this episode you're gonna have some background music of the AC because it is ridiculously hot in Texas, and I'm gonna have the AC going the whole entire time. Typically I cut it off whenever I'm filming because of the whole background noise, but it's gotta be on. Now, in this episode we are attaching the handle scales to this wonderful knife that we're making right here. I'm really excited about this one. You know, in the last episode we were able to go ahead and acid etch and stone wash it. It turned out really nice. I'm really excited about the way that this is turning out. Now, before we jump into the handle scale process and me showing you that, I want to start this video off with a quote that I thought was really cool. Y'all have probably heard it, but in school you are taught a lesson and then given a test. But in life, you are given a test and that teaches you a lesson. My takeaway from that is you don't know if you're going to have nothing but great experiences or bad experiences, but no matter what, you've got to learn from those experiences. And hopefully you take the time to teach others what you learned from both good and bad experiences in your life. You know, if y'all actually pay attention to the intro of my videos, underneath the Rivers Experience it says experience, learn, teach. You know, you have good experiences, bad experiences, they happen to everybody, but you have to be able to learn from those, and you have to be able to push forward and then hopefully impart that knowledge on someone else. Because if you got given a test and were taught a lesson and then you just held that for yourself, you know, I'm not saying it's wasting a lesson, because at least you were taught something and at least you learned from it, hopefully. But if you have the chance and the opportunity, make sure you impart that knowledge on someone else. You know, for me, I do this stuff for one, to help y'all either be better knife makers or maybe push yourselves outside your comfort zone, because maybe you're a knife maker who's been making knives for a really long time, and then you have someone like me come in and do something that might not be your average thing. You know, something like this right here, it might not be your average knife build, but hopefully you learn something from it and you might go, you know what, I'm gonna push myself past my boundary and I'm gonna try something different. Or I'm gonna make a sword that looks ridiculous, or I'm gonna make this other thing that looks crazy, or I'm gonna try cable Damascus or whatever. I want everything that I experience and that I learn from those experiences to be taught to as many people as possible. You know, and these videos aren't just for y'all, they're also for my kids. My kids are 11, 4, and 2. And they watch my YouTube videos. I find it absolutely awesome that they do that. My wife always has them playing on the TVs. But when it boils down to it, even if I'm gone, the stuff lives on the internet forever. They'll be able to watch me do something and create something and learn from that for a very long time, even if I'm not here. And that was one of the reasons why, you know, I do as much of, you know, the videos and as much that I do on these on this platform, is because when it boils down to it, you know, my kids are going to see this for a really long time, and I'm willing to invest this time into doing all of this stuff to make that possible. So, yeah. Hopefully that resonates with some of y'all, and if it does, let me know in the comment section. But without further ado, let's jump into today's video. Now, the handle scale material that I'm going to put on this knife, some of y'all might think it makes sense. I think actually a lot of y'all are going to like this, to be fair. But this knife right here, we're going with olive drab micarta. So, awesome olive drab micarta plus black micarta pins. So the handle material and pin material are going to be resistant to water. Water's not going to affect them at all. So if I'm working out in the yard, because again, this is a knife that I'm going to use while doing yard work. I'm going to make a sheath for it, and it's just going to go with me whenever I'm trimming trees, trimming bushes, and all that stuff. So there you go. But The micarta, I'm not gonna have to worry about it absorbing water or anything like that, or swelling because of the water coming in contact with it like I would some type of wood material or natural material. So we are going to be using these particular materials, and the goal for today is to get these handle scales cut out, holes drilled, and glued up, so that in the next Shop Talk Tuesday we can actually break down the shaping process, which is going to be pretty important because I still see a lot of people on all the different forums that make handles that really aren't that ergonomically comfortable looking, and I will hopefully get y'all more comfortable with contouring a handle, and the fact that it shouldn't be a daunting thing. I know removing that much material from a handle and risking messing it up might seem kind of scary, but you can do it, and I'm going to show y'all how I do it and easy ways to do it whenever we do next week's Shop Talk Tuesday. So for this one, let's go over to the workbench. Let's get this thing going. So now what we need to do is get these just attached together. You know, nothing too crazy there. This is just so that we can go ahead and start drilling holes and things like that. You just need to take a strip of tape. This is just blue painter's tape. You've seen me use this probably plenty of times, unless this is your first time watching one of these videos where I put scales on something. So we're just going to take them side by side, press it down, and tape one side of the scales together. Now this gets them pretty even. You can still open them up, do everything that you need to do. It's just like a little book. So we've got that. Now we need to take our knife, put our tang over the scales, kind of figure out exactly where we want these things to line up, especially if you're trying to match up a particular wood grain. So let's say we took something like this right here and we wanted to show off all of the grain up here or back here. We wanted this darker piece or this lighter piece. We would move the knife accordingly to match up to that wood grain. But for this, it's all going to be one color, so we're just going to put it on here, line it up, and you know, the scales for this are going to go, I'm going to use pretty much all of the length in this. I'm going to be just cutting off a little bit on the ends, but we just need to go ahead, get it positioned where we want it, about there, and then mark the outside of our tang. This gives us a good reference for if, let's say, the scales shift or something during the drilling process. We have an idea of where to go back to. And then I'm going to mark where I'm going to have the area for the finger choil, or the area where the ricasso is going to be, just in front of the finger choil. So that's what I marked right here. So I know I'm going to go ahead and angle it all the way up to here, and that's going to give me the front of the handle scale. And I'm going to kind of match the angle of the back here. That way it looks pretty even on both front and back of this. So that way those angles are pretty consistent. But that is going to be our handle scale right there. The rest of this is just going to be excess. So now what we need to do is clamp our tang onto here. Get it positioned where it needs to be. There we go. Now all we got to do is drill through this front hole, and then we'll put a pin in there, take our clamps off and drill through the back two holes. So the back hole and the lanyard hole. There we go. Well, now it's time to go ahead and drill our pinholes. We're using a 3/16 drill bit because we have 3/16 pins. We're just going to go in, go through both scales. I'm using a backer so I don't risk blowing out the back side of this material. That way we end up with crisp holes coming out. So now we're going to go with our JB Weld 5-minute epoxy. Some of y'all might be asking, when are you going to start using something other than the JB Weld stuff? Because didn't you say you were going to try out like the West Systems or something like that? Yes, I will eventually try a different epoxy, but I'm going to wait for this stuff to get pretty close to running out. And it will most likely be the West Systems because that seems to be what everybody's having really good luck with right now. So that's probably the route that I'm going to go. We'll see how it goes. For right now, I'm going to keep using what I have, which is the JB Weld 5-minute epoxy. One of the things I did change too, I have this little paint spreader thing for, you know, paints. And I've actually started mixing it or mixing my epoxy and applying it with this. I have been just using a little metal rod this whole entire time, and this is actually a little bit better. It mixes a little bit better, faster, and it lets me apply it a lot easier as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it on all the surfaces and then put everything together. And we're just putting a coat thick enough to get it all over it, but not so crazy that we're going to have a ton of squeeze out. Now I do want to get down into these little holes that I drilled into the back side of it, or indentions, divots, whatever you want to call it. Those are on there so that we have a really good bond. One of the things that I did do was I scuff sanded the back side of the scales where they're actually going to meet the tang itself. That way we have a little bit better mechanical bond. So we got that coated. Now we're just going to coat one side of the tang right now. Just get it down in that little groove. Okay, so now that that side is coated, we're going to go ahead, put our pins in their little spots. I'm dipping the ends of them in the epoxy. The only one I'm not really going to do that to is the lanyard tube one, because I don't want to have a whole bunch of epoxy on the end of it. So I'm going to take this little metal rod that I was mixing the epoxy with, and I'm just going to coat the inside of that hole on both scales, just so that I know that it gets a nice mechanical bond without squeezing a whole bunch of epoxy down into the inside of it. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and coat the other side. When it just goes together like that, that is just super satisfying. Because you know you got everything square, everything drilled right. You don't have to bang anything into place. Now what I'm going to do, take these little clamps, clamp it close to the pins, and then I'm going to run a clamp down the center, down the end. And I'm not clamping it down too crazy. I'm not trying to squeeze all the epoxy out. I'm just putting pressure evenly across it. And I'm going to add one more clamp. Okay. Now we can go ahead and clean off our excess epoxy around the tang itself. Not the tang, but the ricasso area. And you can see the fact that I'm not really clamping these down because they move pretty easily. Clamping them down enough to keep it bonded but not going too crazy. Now what you want to do whenever you're cleaning off the ricasso area is you want to make sure that you're not cleaning it like this, because that epoxy will go down in between the scales and the knife itself, or the tang. You don't want that to happen because it'll just keep on dissolving the glue. There we go, all cleaned off, ready to go ahead and harden overnight. Alright guys, let's go ahead and wrap this Shop Talk Tuesday up here. So again, got our scales put on here, and they are the olive drab green micarta scales. Then we have 3/16 micarta black pins, and then we have a 3/16 brass lanyard tube. I think this overall combination with the acid etch and stone wash is going to be a good just balance of finishes, I guess you could say. I'm interested to know what direction you thought I was going to go with this. Did you think I was going to do some burl scales or black G10 or something like that, a multi-layered thing? Or were you expecting me to do something more simple and just nice and sleek like this? I really don't want to know. Do y'all think this was the right direction, or do you think I should have done something crazy? I think this is going to balance it out really well. And I really wanted to do the micarta versus something like a natural wood or even a stabilized wood. I think that this is the correct path. And like I said, I want to know what y'all think. But in the next episode, so next Tuesday, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on shaping these scales. I'm going to break it down into all the little bitty processes because I want to get y'all comfortable with just doing all the contours and all that stuff so you can get your handles to just have those ergonomics that just make people want to hold and use them. If you have a knife that is absolutely beautiful but it's uncomfortable to hold, no one will use it. It'll make a cool looking wall hanger, but it won't be something that will be utilized. So being able to be confident with contouring and just making comfortable handles is going to be key in your knife making career, if you want to call it that, or your knife making hobby. You know, you don't have to practice on the actual knives. All you got to do, take you a piece of wood that is typically the thickness of what you start shaping your handles with, and just start contouring it. You know, start getting used to what your belts do, what your grit levels do with your, you know, your 2x72 or your 1x30 or your files, and just get used to contouring. Practice, practice, practice. That's all there is. But guys, that is the end of this one. On Friday, we have our heat treat process for the 2 Insanity builds. Really excited about that. So you'll have that to look forward to, plus, you know, Sunday's build and all that. But anyways, y'all go ahead, make sure y'all give this video a thumbs up, share this video or one of my other videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Guys, thank y'all for coming by, spending your time with me. Y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there. I'll catch y'all next time.